500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom!
The ghost who walks.
The Phantom!
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom. He finds
G'day everybody,
you.
and for those who have come in late, you're listening to the Expand the Phantom podcast. This is episode 156, The Fight Against Singh, which is part of the 22nd Phantom saga. So my name is Jermaine, and today I am joined by the full crew in Stephen and Dan. How are you guys going?
Very good, Jermaine. Very good. How are you, lads?
Yep, I'm good too. Always good to talk Phantom, even on a cold Ballarat night.
It is.
Exactly.
It is. So
I was actually hoping to have different surroundings. I thought I might be able to go outside with a heater, but my adults wouldn't go to sleep, so I'm going back to the Subaru.
Not a big enough heater, I'd think.
Oh no, it actually works all right.
all right. So it looks like my fellow podcast hosts are all sporting a little bit extra hair from the isolation.
Yes, guilty. This is why we're a podcast, first and foremost. And if you're watching us on YouTube, well, it serves you right.
Look, there's nothing better than a beard, apart from having a beard and talking Phantom.
All right. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the fight against the Singh, which is the stories that have come out just recently with in Australia. There's 4 parts. It's quite in depth, so we're going to talk about that. But first of all, we're going to mix things up a little bit tonight, so bear with us. So first of all, we're going to thank our Patreon listeners. So all our Patreons, I hope you've been enjoying your Patreon rewards. I hope you've all received your card for Mikkel's Kickstarter game, which was very, very successful. Now, if you haven't received that and you're listening to that, hit us up on social media. Mail might take a little bit longer, but make sure you hit us up and we can kind of go from there. There's also going to be the draw for the winter, which is going to be up. Time of recording, the announcement wouldn't have been done, but it's for those who are interested. It's a signed Felmain card and a couple of drawing inserts, overlays with pencils and inks by Felmain. So also our Patreons get access to the Phantom Preservation Project. Now, some of our updated highlights for May, recently in Phantom's World 11, published by Frew, there was The Haunted Castle, which is a remake of a Falk and Moore/McCoy story. Now, Felmain, which we discussed in the podcast, his artwork got censored and edited. We've actually got a hold of the original artwork. Have you guys had a look at this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I have.
So if you're a Patreon and if your reward is of the P3, you can go and have a look at that. Some of the other stuff is we now have all of the Friends of the Phantom newsletters on there. We've also got behind the scenes of our Bushfire Appeal fundraiser book, which includes some alternative covers and some progress drafts and proofs and stuff like that as well. There's also the 42-minute video of the 1996 A&E biography, which is a very interesting watch. If you haven't watched that, make sure you go and watch it out. And of course, there's a lot more as well, so just check out our index. Now, even if you're not a Patreon, you can still check out the index and have a look at what exactly is on there. And we're gathering information all the time as well. Okay, so again, thank you to all our Patreons. We've now got 42 of them, so a huge shout out to all of them. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the fight against the Singh, which is the latest installment of the 22nd Phantom saga. Now, it was written by Swedish giant Claes Remifi and illustrated by Janice Auden, who is from Poland. Now, we're not going to be discussing Heart of Darkness. There's 4 chapters in there. We're not We're not going to be discussing that. We're just going to be discussing these stories. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to hand over to Steve, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the tale of the tape and kind of give everyone a bit of a catch-up of what has happened and what is happening, and then we are going to go from there. So, Stephen, can you please take over?
Thanks, Jermaine. Rightio. So, if you've read the story, you'll be familiar with the setting, but if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, here's a bit of a synopsis for you. So, it's the tale, or the comic, the story, is set a few years in the future. And imagines a dismal and dystopian future for the Phantom universe. An earthquake and a tsunami have devastated Bangalla and wiped out Morristown. Bababu, good old General Bababu, he was always good for a good story. Bababu is in tenuous charge of Bangalla, threatened by growing gang power and under pressure from international arms dealers. Sandal Singh, she's under threat as leader of the Singh pirates, with a coup planned by her cousin Rular Singh. Bangalla, needless to say, is in chaos. Meanwhile, the 21st Phantom has been missing for over a year. Hero was found in the first part, but Devil is still missing. Diana and the Phantom split up over the possibility that the Phantom fathered Sandal Singh's son, which first appeared in 2015 Rodea Gate, part 2 of the Singh War, after apparently being conceived in the 2011 fateful meeting. And if you're a long-time podcast listener, you'll know some of our feelings about that one. However, has been named in part 1 of this 4-part series as Nadir, or Nadir, depending on your pronunciation. Kit and Heloise initially struggled to work together, but coming together now. During the fight against Singh's story, they split up, but not as in they had a big fight or anything. One's gone after their father, so Kit's gone to look to go find the 21st Phantom, and Heloise has gone to protect their mother. Now I'll throw over to Germ. I can't wait to discuss this. Hope we can get through your part, Germ. Let's get through it.
I was going to say, did you read a thesaurus or something today?
Well, I did choose this part because I really like the adjectives and that verbs and whatever else was written up there. But that's a nice. I'll read that part.
Okay, so
I got shivers down my spine at the start of it, Steve.
I'm looking at him going, I'm just as well I didn't say that bit. I wouldn't have been able to pronounce half of those words.
See, I was doing you a solid there, mate.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we have now seen 7 parts of this futuristic story. I think it's important that we remember that it is set in the future. So the first 3...
and you're reminded that every issue.
Yeah.
It always says a few years in the future.
I think
no matter when you read this, it's always a few years in the future.
That's one
but the 21st is always the current Phantom.
Okay, so the first 3 stories was published all the way back in 2016 in Team Phantom Man and 2017 for free. So for Team Phantom Man, or for the Egmont and Norwegian versions, it was issue 9 of 2016, issue 21 of 2016, and issue 2 and 3 of 2017. For free, it was published in 1792, 1793, and 1794. So what we're going to be doing today is reviewing the last 4 parts, which is named Fight Against the Singh. So it was originally published all last year for Phantom Man, which is issue 5 of 2019, issue 6 and 7 of 2019, issue 17 of 2019, and issue 22 and 23 of 2019.
Before you go on, Jim, does that mean that they had a big gap between...
Yes.
Oh, poor fellas.
Yeah. I was just going to say... Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, Stephen. So,
what was the length of time between first and fourth?
Episode issue 5th, which would have been probably about April, and then the last one would have been late November, early December. So basically over a year. Where we got them,
at least
we
8 months,
got it about over 2 to 3 months period, which was April to June.
Well, basically consecutively.
I should have checked my notes because it actually says that. Issues 1864, 1866, 1867, and 1868. So now I'm going to hand over to Dan, and he's going to explain the next part, and we'll go from there. Which is just, I'm looking forward to this next part.
Sure. So what we did, Jermaine had put up on social media a few, just a general query. What did you think of the story and that sort of thing? So we want to share some of the what our fans have said, or people who are on. And there's a little peek behind the curtains there. But basically, we wanted to share what people had said on the social medias as to their response to this story and their thoughts on the plot. From Instagram, there's a new fandom account there who posts fandom memes and that sort of thing. He's pretty funny. You can we might link to it somewhere else. I'm not going to read that out. But basically, he replied with, "I like what I read. The stakes are high, and it gives the characters a sense of motivation. Subplots are often used for filler to keep continuing the story, so subplots can't be that bad. Regardless, I'm enjoying the story. It's intense to read, and I hope for a stunning conclusion. With that said, I keep thinking to myself, man, this would be an amazing plot for a video game. Lol." So Instagram, I guess the subplot that he's referring to there is what we're going to spend some time on, and that's Sandal Singh's son. And he doesn't mind that one at all. So that's from there. From Facebook, Shane Foley, who actually is the cover artist for part 4 of this, commented there on the Facebook post and said that he's really enjoying the story. And Anthony Gillies said that he's enjoying it too, was a bit worried about his focused card. Shane expanded when he said that he thought the story was really intriguing. He thought that having the 21st Phantom missing in action is a nice plot device to test the reaction to having the twins as the newest Phantoms. He still's not very fussed about the way that so many Phantoms in Swedish stories have illegitimate children, but overall he's enjoying it so far. John Cookson loves the covers. No comment on the story, John. And so that was on Facebook. Over on Twitter, one of our Twitter followers, Master of Wall Staring, is and he's got what's the dog's name from Footrot Flats?
Oh, well, no one knows. No one knows.
Yeah, that's right. That's his profile. But anyway, he replies, "I've only read part 1, and it made me so angry." We're talking there about how did you feel about the 21st Phantom apparently fathering Sandal Singh's child. It made me so angry. So the Phantom had an affair. If I got that right, it's BS. So mixed reactions from the social media world there.
And I really enjoyed having everyone kind of sending some feedback through and stuff like that. And I know it's generated a lot of conversation with us and some of these other people off social media as well. So no.
So how can people get in touch with us on social media?
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's my. I got distracted by working out how to share screens and stuff. So if you want to get in touch with us on social media, when I mention Facebook, just go for and search Chronicle Chamber, or we're the admin team of the Fandom Collector Group. If you want to go to Twitter, we are at Chronicle_tweet. On Instagram, you just search for us at Chronicle Chamber, and on YouTube, you can find us on Chronicle Chamber as well. And maybe you're watching us there now, so in which case, you've already found us. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have some fun. We're going to discuss the stories. But before we do that, one of the discussions that we did have was about what would a younger fan think about this type of story? Because the story, how would you put it? It's in parts, it's quite adult. The art's quite adult. The overall feel is adult. You know, kind of feels like an adult comic. So what we've done is Dan got his 11-year-old son Gus, who's not a stranger to anyone who's listened to this podcast, to read a couple of the stories, and then Dan spent a couple of minutes just talking to Gus, just to kind of get a bit of a younger person's opinion on the stories. And I think this is important because, and I'm sure you guys will agree with this as well, is that, you know, while we're, you know, let's face it, we're old farts now, but it's good to see. It's good to see. Younger, I think you're now in your 40s, aren't you, Steve?
Yeah, big 40 now.
So, it's good to hear from a younger person. So we'll just pause for a little bit and we will hand the microphone over to Gus.
Right, Gus, you've just read the Fight Against Singh stories, part 1 and 2 out of 3 and 4.
Yeah.
In 5 words or less, what did you think?
They were really awesome.
4 words, that's good. Tell us about the covers.
Oh, they were really colourful, and I liked, even it sort of tells most of the characters, some of them, and that was really cool because you sort of want to match them up in the stories. Like, oh, that guy's there, where is he in the story? Like, you go through and you find them. It's pretty cool. And there were lots of them, which was awesome.
Yep.
You find even more characters in the actual book.
Okay. Yeah. So you asked me very early, like when you were looking at the covers, is this about the female Phantom? So tell me, what did you find it to be about?
I found it out to be that the dad, the Phantom, had disappeared, and Kit and Heloise, the twins, were trying to rescue him. Yeah. Were they rescuing him?
Well, they're trying.
Yeah, trying.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
They're trying to find him. Yeah. Yep. So what were some of the best bits of the story, the 2 parts that you've read so far?
Well, the most surprising would probably be when I found out Old Man Moz was blind, and he somehow found them in the bush, somehow. And he said he had developed this thing called an inner eye. Not sure what that's about, but
Yeah. Yep.
I liked all the action, and yeah.
Okay. What did you think about seeing the twins both being the Phantom? Because
It was so amazing. And what was pretty funny was when, since some of the pygmy or band of people said how come that woman is dressed up in a Phantom suit, and then another person answered him, it is still the Phantom, he can change like genders, and he can even split himself into more than one person if he wants to.
Yeah, cool.
That was weird.
Because you haven't seen the twins or had read any other stories about the twins since they were little kids.
When they first went to school.
Yeah.
Kit went to the Himalayas.
So was it interesting to see them all grown up and being the Phantom?
Yeah, it was strange. And one of the ones where Kit was like a shadow, he sort of looked like the actual Phantom, just a bit more small. And if that was just in a normal picture, I probably would have thought that was actually the Phantom.
So he looks a lot like, yeah,
Nearly identical.
to his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And what about the Singh pirates? Did you like reading about them?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts about them? And that storyline, like how, like the Sandal Singh, the leader, is getting people trying to kill her and stuff?
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
And probably the cruelest bit in the Singh Pirates bit was when they had to fight to the death on narrow beams above a shark-infested lake. And the last person standing would get to be pardoned.
Did you know they had something a bit similar to that in the very first ever Phantom story, like 80 years ago? Fighting on a shark tank type thing?
Is it the Phantom one that I know?
I don't know. If
with Billy Zane in it?
No, well, they do have sharks in that too, don't they? So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a theme. But no, the very first ever Phantom story had them fighting in over a shark tank.
Oh, cool.
So it's a bit of a theme
I
through
want to
Phantom.
watch that.
It's a comic book.
Well, can I read it then?
Yeah, okay. Okay. Anything else you want to say, like about parts 1 and 2? Are you excited to read part 3 and 4?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely excited to read parts 3 and 4. I also like how it's not all in just one big book. Like, you've got all these separate ones, and that's makes it so you can, like, there's also mini comic bits at the end,
Yeah.
which are pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it's too late at night now for you to read part 3 and 4. You got to go to bed. Bad luck. All right. Thanks for talking to us, Gus.
That's fine.
See ya.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Dan and Gus. Really appreciate yous jumping on and doing that as well. So
Now, before anyone rings child protection or anything like that, I did read the stories first. There was parental guidance in the sense of I decided that if he can read Harry Potter back to back 17 times and watch the movies in the dark, he can certainly cope with the Phantom story with some slightly adult themes. It was
compared to Harry Potter, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, no, he enjoyed it, and as you heard, he's looking forward to reading parts 3 and 4. So he's got them lined up for breakfast reading in the morning.
Awesome. That is good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the covers, because I think the covers are, they're the ones that sit in the newsagent. That's what a lot of people start off with and stuff like that. So, Stephen, do you want to give us a bit of your opinion, a bit of a shout out on the covers, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. So all the covers I think are great now. At time of recording, I haven't got the fourth part, so I don't have the fourth one right in front of me, but I was shown it before. If you just flick it back up on the screen there, Germ. So
No worries, mate. This is one by Shane Foley.
Shane Foley, who was mentioned earlier in the tweets or what have you, in the responses. I think they've all done a stellar job and all would stand out nicely on the shelves. I think part 1 is that that looks like Jeremy McPherson's work.
Yep.
Part 2, I'm just going to say Alex. I'm not going to try saying his surname. Sorry,
Alex T, I think he's happy with.
Alex T.
Or Trip.
Good
Alex
on you,
Tripp,
Alex. And Chewy Chan with part 3.
Yep.
And I should show back covers as well because they're also superb. My pick of the bunch is Alex's. I really like Alex's work here. I like all of the work, but Alex's, I guess it's the symmetry of the front cover. I'm doing my best here to show it. I really like the way that's set out and planned, if you like. And the back cover, that could be a front cover.
Yeah.
It does remind me of the diptych or the triptych. I can't remember which one that
the diptych one,
which Jamie Johnson did.
Is that the one with his over the tombstone?
This one, I'll just remember with the 2 gangsters or something, or 2 thugs about to have a crack at him.
Yeah.
So it harkens back to that, but we got in front of the Skull Cave and I think that's a really striking back cover, which complements the front cover really, really well. That's my opinions on the covers.
Yep.
Fellas, what do you guys think? Dan, what do you reckon?
Oh, I loved all of the covers as well. To be honest, the Chewy Chan cover probably was a little bit overly muscly for me as a fan, but then the composition of the rest of it and the story it tells with the shark tank and all the rest of it is fantastic. I probably would agree with you, to be honest, Steve, in terms of my favourite cover would be the one on 1866 by Alex Tripp, and so that's credit to him and his first Phantom cover. I really enjoyed it for all the sort of reasons that you said as well. So, which is not that I don't like the others, but that if you've got to pick one, that would be my favourite. I'll put this question to you though, both of you guys. Would it have been better if Frew had done a quad tick, if you like, so 4 consecutive covers, or even a pair of diptychs out of this 4?
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well, and I have to say that I think it would have been. It would have required. It would have been better to have whether it was a 2 diptychs or a quadriptych or whatever you want to call it, but it would have been. That's probably one of the things that I loved the most about the first part was that the covers kind of matched up, and it just. I understand giving artists more opportunity, and when they probably did this, it was probably also for Supernova. So in that way, all these artists would have covers to sign at the Supernova booth, which would be happening in a couple of weeks' time and stuff like that. So I understand that, but in my opinion, from a pure collector's point of view, I would have liked to seen a 2 diptychs or a quad diptych or whatever you want to call it.
I hadn't thought of it, to tell you the truth. I really hadn't until you just mentioned it then. And not that I don't think that's a bad idea, because it's a decent idea, but I do like the variety that we've gotten now with the 4 different artists depicting 4 different parts of the whole story in their own special way. So I kind of like the uniqueness of each artist's style, I guess.
That's a good point.
I absolutely agree with you, Steve. I do like the variety that we've got. I know that diptychs would be really hard too if you're going to go with different artists, so it makes sense to do it with just the one. I liked what King did with one of their King's quests, where they had the stories go vertically under each other and tie through. So that was really cool, which makes me wonder if you could even do a diptych that was like this and then matched up down here. So it was actually became really quite a cool poster rather than a strip. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but again, that's a lot of effort and a lot of work.
Yeah, you raise a good point with King. So that was the first issue over the 4 different things, but I think it was their second one. It was actually 4 squares. And so if you remember it had like the Phantom, and then it had someone else, and then that kind of overlapped with, with what it was. So it's a good point.
Like you said, it would have made a lot of more sense. There's arguments for both if you want to go to Supernova, and whether it's signatures on artists, cut various covers, or a collectible poster. Either way, but
it's a win-win either way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
for us. But I guess for the artists, more work, more covers mean more work for them. And
exactly. So I think that's what it would probably normally be, is that it's, because I know in the past they've done that. If one of the Australian artists are going to Supernova, they try and get them to do a cover in the prior couple of months, so that way they've got the jam cover and another issue which people can come up to them and stuff like that.
And we've all enjoyed it, and it's worked really well.
Okay, so now I think before we discuss anything more about the story, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, because I think that's probably what we're going to be discussing and probably spend the most of the time on. So I'm going to hand over to you guys first. So basically what we're going to be talking about is the subplot of the Phantom possibly fathering Sandal Singh's son, who is named Nadir, which Stephen talked about previously. So now I'm not going to say anything more, and I'm going to hand it over to you guys, and then we'll kind of go from there. So who wants to go first out of yous?
Well, we'll just get started and see what happens. We'll see what this has been a very interesting conversation that the 3 of us have had behind the scenes over the last few weeks, let's say.
Yeah.
And there was a stage when it was going to get pretty sweary, and depending on what Jermaine says, it could still get pretty sweary.
No, that's exactly right. I like how Jermaine set this up so that he gets the last word.
He is not going to get the last
1, 2, 3.
No. You will get a chance to respond and stuff. Seeing I'm, kind of running it, I got to let you guys go first.
Okay.
So basically, as was mentioned in the recap, the tale of the tape, Diana left the Phantom.
Can I confirm? Did we only find that out in this 4-parter? That didn't happen in the first 3, did it?
That's correct, because we never saw Diana at all in the first.
That's right.
In the first part.
So we're only learning. Only learning about this story arc in this series now.
Yes, and what a shock it was. So she's over in America, as she often finds herself due to her work with the UN.
Yep.
And then we see her monologuing, for lack of a better word. There should be a better word there that I can't think of. Talking about having to leave Kit because he was unfaithful to her.
I'm just gonna show this panel here while you're talking, Steve. This is the monologue. When I learned that he had a child with Sandal Singh, it was as if someone had twisted a knife in my stomach. So,
which is a
and
reasonable response.
goes on, and goes on to say that here they've been separated.
Yeah,
She's left him.
And we're definitely on record on saying that we don't like that story arc in the let's say the regular issues, not just this futuristic one. And how it just seems to be okay for Sandal to drug, or was it what happened? He was not. You take over.
Drugged and then raped. Then so we're led to believe that Sandal drugged and then raped the Phantom.
Yeah, and everyone seems
because
to be
of that
reasonably cool with it, and it's Phantom's fault that he fathered a child with Sandal. That's probably not saying it quite right, but you get the idea. And where are we up to? And so, of course, Diana's angry with Kit for fathering a child with Sandal, and has left him. And we really don't think that should be a plot device used in this story or used at all, do we, Dan?
No, we don't. And I know we keep talking about, and this is one thing that I know. It's going to feel like I'm trying to jump ahead of the game, but in terms of us talking about the possibility of the father being Nadir's father, or Sandal's, the illegitimate father, it's just recounted as fact in each of these 4 comic books. It's not a possibility. It's recounted as fact, and all of the quotes that I could find around Nadir and how people talked about him, it was all fact, and that's how it's presented.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because previously, before this story, it was very wishy-washy. Like Sandal would say, "It's your son," and then a couple of pages later, she would say, "It is not your son." So they've either...
and can I show you...
Yeah, show us the panel.
This is how she talks about the father of her child now. I'll just try and get that in focus again. It's this panel here.
Watching on the video?
Yeah, sorry. For those not watching on the video, she says, "Don't you think I would recognise the father of my child? But the similarity is striking. You must be related." So, don't you think?
What page initial is that one?
So that's page 9 of part 3, 1867.
Yeah.
And to put it in context, Kit's gone to rescue his father, and he's dressed up as the Phantom. And so looks very much like his old man, but she knows that there's a bit of a difference there.
So, but she and deliberately calls him the father of my child.
Yeah. So the way I see it is that it's either there has to be a story that we haven't seen yet, where it's become fact, or they're still led to believe that it is. So, in my opinion, and I know you guys are different, I'm still of the opinion until I see a story where there's some form of, what would you call it, DNA testing or something like that, I'm still on the fence of whether it is the son or not. That's just my opinion. And I believe there was some conversation that we had with a couple of other fans, and one fan in particular did use the word DNA testing, typical soap opera type of stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's where I sit, and I know you guys are different. So,
I'm not in that sense. I'm not different.
Okay.
I'm still holding on to a shred of hope that it's not his son.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's probably what I'm doing. I'm hoping that Claes Remifi, who, let's face it, is probably written... Well, by the time he retires, he probably would have written the most Phantom stories ever, because he's not that far behind Lee Falk now. So for someone who's probably the most prolific Phantom creator, you would kind of hope that he's not going to destroy the lore of the Phantom by doing something like that, and he's just, winding us all up. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm grasping on. I'm grasping at straws, I know, but that's what, until I see a story where it's there's a DNA test that shows it or whatever, I'm on the fence that it's still a possibility.
I just don't know what the point of doing that is. Like, why would Clay-Through-Methy even play with that? Like, genuine Phantom fans don't like it. It's neither Steve and I, and I'm not saying you're not genuine because you've just said that you're, sorry, I hope that didn't come out that way, because you've just said about how you're hoping that he hasn't broken the law as well.
Yeah.
I think Steve and I are a little bit more pessimistic, I suppose, around whether he has or not. And I hope that he's not coming to that point of his career where he's written the most Phantom stories and then he's going to retire and he's just going, well, maybe I need to make a big change that is my thing that I can stamp on the Phantom. And he's tried to do that sort of thing before in the 90s with the election in Bangalla and that split with Laga getting ousted as president. So he's tried to do that sort of thing before. He's got history there.
To be fair, that wasn't just Clay-Through-Methy. That was...
No, I know. Yeah, that was when it was more of a team.
We won't put all the blame on Clace for that one.
Okay, but he was certainly involved. He was certainly.
I still want him on the podcast.
I can absolutely understand if you're writing for a character that's already established. It must be frustrating to be stuck in someone else's sandbox. In a sense, we hear from emerging artists who are grateful to be able to play in the fan box, and that's fantastic. But as you sort of said there, Germ, Clace is at the point where, it must be frustrating to keep bumping up against the edges of it and go, I'd want to do something. I just hope this is not the something that he wants to establish.
But I think you raised a good question, and I want to get back to that. Is it a subplot that needs to be included in the story? Because I think this is where we probably disagree on. Well, I think this is where we will disagree. So
one thing I'd clarify before we go
get
on.
Back to that question, if you wanted to finish it up, something else before we get on to that.
No, I just think that, and I was probably one of the first ones of us to start calling it a subplot. But the more I think of it, was conceived in 2011, so that's 9 years ago. So this is more of a thread than a subplot. And this is Clace trying to tie in, it's a long-term story arc that he's been working on.
Yeah.
And now he's pitched it into the future as well. So, that makes it more important, I think, than a subplot.
Yeah. And to be fair, there are a lot of other long threads that are coming into here as well. Like there's Babubu, there's the Dogo Singh sickness, there's... the brother of Dogeyes and their kids and cousins and stuff like that. They're all long-winding threads that are actually longer than this one as well. So there's there's a lot of different threads. Is there anything you want to say before we get on to is it a necessary story?
No.
We'll use the word thread. We won't use the sub.
Well, it's not a necessary. Let's just go into it. It's not a necessary story thread. Where we had a big argument, it was a week or two ago, was arguing why is Diana in New York or the USA, wherever she is over there, and why isn't she in Bangalla? Well, straight away, her work with the UN could easily put her in New York or and have her away from Bangalla.
It usually does, to be honest.
And it does a lot, that's right. And then we said, well, why hasn't she returned? Well, there was a giant earthquake, there's been a tsunami, the place is ravaged. Well, we can't get out of our country at the moment because some person over in China ate a bat. I'm fairly certain that a natural disaster is going to stop flights and stuff coming into Bangalla or Morristown or Morristown.
Yeah. In fact, I think in part 2, there's talk about an epidemic, because when Hamid shoots the kids who have tried to rob Luaga, he says something about you better bury those or they might cause an epidemic.
Yeah,
right. Those reasons not to go in.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point, Stephen, and I did say that. So my counter argument, and I like this because we're kind of explaining our argument to our listeners, so they'll kind of, my counter argument to that is she doesn't want to go to Bangalla because it reminds her of her husband, the 21st Phantom, and because and because my argument is that if they weren't split up, she would come back to Bangalla, even if, and she does in episode 3 and 4. She goes through having to, fly to the different countries and get herself smuggled in and stuff. Because normally, if she was on speaking terms with her husband, as soon as he was disappeared and there's fear that he's dead and stuff like that, she would come back and try and find him or help and stuff like that. And she's done
Would
that.
be just as...
She's done that in the past when he was majorly injured and stuff like that. She drops everything and goes to him. And like, for instance, I'm thinking of Terror in Morristown, which is the Sunday story where he gets blown up by the python when the first time we see him. He's lying half dead and she rushes in and spends time with him. So there is precedent and, of basically when the Phantom needs her, she will drop everything and go there. And I guess the way I rationalise it is that the reason why she is not there until now is because Bangalla reminds her of the betrayal, reminds her of the 21st Phantom and what has happened.
Except it's not a betrayal, by the way.
Well, she sees it as a betrayal. And so that's why she hasn't come until now. And that's why I think she has, that's my response to your comment, if that kind of makes sense.
I guess we would need to know, and that quote I showed before about I learned he had a child with Sandal Singh, we'd need to find about how she learned and what she learned about the child. And that's that story. I don't know that we're ever going to see a Phantom story where they go to a laboratory and get a DNA test. But there does need to be, to fill that gap, a story about, well, how did Diana learn? What did she learn?
Yeah.
In terms of, well, why else would she be in New York? Maybe she's chasing down leads. The Phantom's been missing for 12 months and he is an international traveller and she's got access to the United Nations resources. Maybe she goes to New York to be a detective in her own right and track down where he is now. And maybe there is a genuine lead. That's another potential story arc that gets that happening without the need for the Phantoms.
So in other words, what you're saying is a bit more creative writing from Clace. Could have had her in New York for a specific period of time rather than a cop out with the child.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't use those words, and it's not a cop out. He's plot committed to this child. As we said, conceived in 2011. He is all in on this, and this is the direction he's taking it. And I'm not a fan.
Yeah. What I like about your idea there, Dan, or your suggestion, was it still makes Diana quite strong. She's being proactive, trying to find, like I said, leads on her husband, which, I think is great and would suit. If we could write an alternative plot to this is the way we'd go. Everything else, I reckon, is fantastic. But just little.
I agree. These 4 stories taken together remove any reference to Nadir and the son, and it's a great story. It's an absolute ripper. But this spoils it to the point where we're now going to spend half the podcast talking about it. I don't know if Clace is having an inside joke with us, because to call the son Nadir, the definition of Nadir is the low point of something. So if he's written in somehow, or maybe that's Fru's translation. Maybe Dudley's having a laugh. But Nadir, by definition, is the low point, and that seems to be where we're going.
That is awesome. It's a great name. So my opinion is, and we've said it before, and I agree with you, I don't like the idea of the Phantom possibly fathering Nadir. Where I stand on it, I'm on the fence in the sense that I don't like the story thread, but I don't dislike the story thread, and the outcome of who the father is will determine whether I like it or whether I don't. One of the thing that I like about the cloud of uncertainty is that it heaps another layer of trouble on the Walker family. The thing that I really like about this story is that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's the twins fighting. There's Diana and mum and dad not talking, living in different continents. There's, then the fact that he disappears, and then old man Moz loses his sight, and then there's Babubu that's taken over, and and all this type of stuff. It's almost like the perfect storm. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and then we've got this broken family that have to come together, and it's like another layer of junk that has been chucked onto them to try and work through. That's why I'm kind of sitting on the fence, is because it's just another layer for them to work through and sort out.
That layer is not one that Phantom fans are familiar with. And if I think back across the nearly 90 years of Phantom history, the closest we've ever seen to something like this is probably the Marshall sisters, or through the 40s and 50s before the actual engagement, that sometimes the Phantom's head might get turned for a fraction of a second by a pretty girl, especially the sexy bad guys. And they played up to it, and there was that element. But other than that, the Phantom's always been someone who has been in love with Diana since they were 6 and 12 or whatever, 8 and 12 when they met, whatever it was, all the way through. And so for them, it's just so jarring in terms of the family values that we so often talk about with, which is not, and I'm not in any way trying to say that having illegitimate children and all the rest of it is not a family value to be proud of, or anything like that. But it's just not where the Phantom and his lineage has been. So,
and that's a valid point. It's we haven't seen it before. Probably the last time would probably be Susie in the Governor and Susie, or the hijackers story.
Yeah.
And that was just after Diana said no, that she didn't want to marry the Phantom, and they actually broke up. That was after their first engagement. And then he went on the wild adventure with Susie, and from memory, there was some parts where he was kind of wavering and stuff.
I think in that story there was a little bit of flirting as they were running from danger and all that sort of stuff. So it was all, certainly not the level of which we're talking about now when we're using words like rape and half brother and separation and all that sort of stuff.
What I'm looking forward to, and I'm putting full trust in Claes here, is that the payoff is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But like you said, everything's just raining down on at the moment. There's layer upon layer upon layer. Murphy's Law, like you were saying, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. So when things start going right, and hopefully we see the number 20, Phantom 21 come back and find out where he's been, deep undercover. I'd love to see that he's deep undercover in that Sandal Singh pirate compound somewhere, and just eating him from the inside out. We find out that Nadir isn't the Phantom's illegitimate child, and just all these things, all these puzzle pieces start falling into place, and the payoff, hopefully it's in the very, very near future where we get to read it, that it just comes to fruition. Because anyone who does gardening, and I don't do a lot of it, but the more crap you put on the plants, the better they grow. Let's see.
He's putting a lot of crap down.
I was going to say something else, but I went with crap.
That's good. I do not want to have to press that E button when we upload.
And see this absolutely bloom into something. Something
because there's definitely a lot of emotional. I feel like I've got a real emotional investment in this
I can't wait to
story,
read the next part. Yeah. every time I've finished the story, I want to read the next part. I want to read
Yeah.
the next chapter, or whatever you want to call it, of this now.
Yeah.
And, you know, having I'm about to kind of segue into moving on to something away from the thing. Are we good to do that?
Dan, you got anything? I'm happy. I thought we had a very civil conversation.
I hope that the enthusiasm that you guys have shown the last 2 or 3 minutes have given me some hope, I suppose, that maybe, I like your analogy there, Steve, and maybe Clay is a long-term planner and all that sort of stuff, but I just hope it's worth the risk, because at the moment the risk is high. And and if the President Luaga election in Bengali thing, Labanga, split the universe for 20 years,
this could bring him back together. Did you see what Luaga did in part?
Oh no, it's so hard to see. It's so hard to see, and we'll talk about
Luaga playing the long game.
Yeah, we'll talk about him soon. But just I hope, but I just fear.
Yeah.
I pick up each one of these with a little bit of a knot in my stomach going, well, is this going to be the last is this going to be the last Team Fanaman story I read? Because it could come to that.
Well, it means the Comics and News podcast might be shorter without you, Steve. Dan, sorry.
Quite possibly.
All right. Well, I think we'll move on. I hope people enjoyed that. That's kind of like the PG version of our initial conversation.
If you want the M-rated version, give us a minute.
It'll be on P3.
All right, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some story threads or subplots or points out of the whole 4 stories. We've got a list of maybe about 10, and we're just going to fire off and kind of go through there, and then we're going to have a bit of a free-for-all, and that's the plan, and we'll kind of see what happens. So, guys, now one of the things that I like better out of this part than the first 3 parts was the first page of every story.
For those who came in late, it was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, because in the first part, it wasn't until part 3 that we actually got this page. And it reads a lot better when you have that at the start. And I thought Clace and Janice did a brilliant job in making it different but the same, if that kind of makes sense.
100%.
So I really
different camera
that.
angles was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the things I really liked about it.
Like in
and I like...
Yep, sorry. Or in the last issue where you've got Bababu sitting in the middle, and I think everything goes around him.
Yep. So for those who are on YouTube, this is issue 1868, page 1, which I'm sure you can kind of see there. Yeah, brilliant point, Steve.
Yeah. And I liked how you caught up to date with the entire thing on that first page, but often the first or second panel of the next page caught you up on where this arc had got to. So it really... and if we enjoyed that so much when we're getting the comic every second week, imagine how necessary that was for the Egmont readers as they were getting it.
Yeah,
absolutely,
very good. Okay, so what do you guys think about the art? Now, I find this interesting because Dudley almost seemed like he was apologising for the art in some of his message from the Phantom messages. And he was going, it's not Cy Barry. It's not Cy Barry. But I really enjoyed the art.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I did too. There's a few panels I had question marks about, and maybe that was more to do with the characterization, because the Kit, for instance, when he, especially in the first couple of books, if I remember rightly, when he heard about, when the tribe had been wiped out and he wanted to get on the trail of them, and then later when he hears that there's pirates who have attacked a boat, he just goes from 0 to 25 on the Enger scale immediately. But that's not criticism. Again, that the art just seemed a bit over the top in those instances. But maybe that's the characterization being over the top. But no, I quite enjoyed Auden's work. Really good.
Yeah.
Same here, and I think the black and white of the Frews have really helped set the tone of this story. It's a dark and, like it's a dark story. It's layer upon layer of crap. So it's not the most happiest of times, and I think that the black and white of the Fury comic has really added to the way the story feels, I think.
Yeah. Now, I have one criticism with the art, and that is in some panels, in black and white, maybe it didn't really kind of work. There was one, I think it was in part 3. I'll try and bring this up. Like, for instance, and I think a lot of this has to do with it being in black and white and not in colour. This is page 9. For those who are listening to it on the audio, you can see there a panel of Nadir running. And then there was another one where the dude gets shot. Oh, Balaam on page 21 looks a bit off. And this one on page 23, that just didn't work for me in black and white. And then
when you say the one on 23, is that the one where he's firing the gun front? Yeah, that was, and I remember asking you if you had the colour version of that, because I wanted to see what that looked like in colour.
It looked better in colour, didn't it?
Well, I was actually wondering if the gun had kind of been rubbed out or something, because had that been censored, because it's a front-on gunshot, during conversations we'd had earlier about other things. I thought, surely they haven't rubbed out a gun. But no, it was just because of the colouring.
Now, I have one other criticism, and this is kind of forgivable in the sense that he's drawn 4 parts, which probably would have taken me a year to draw the whole lot. So if we look at part 1 on page 13, you look at Sandal Singh, for example, for those who are on YouTube. And then if you look at Sandal Singh on part 3 on page 9, Sandal Singh looks a lot different, just in the way she's portrayed. So, like, just the way she kind of looks with the face and stuff, it doesn't look the same. So that, again, for those, if you're flicking through, like my web hosts, in issue 1864, page 13, and 1867 on page 9, if you look at Sandal Singh's face, she looks different. That's probably really the only criticism I have when it comes to Janice's art. I really enjoyed his art. His art style, and we've talked about this in the past, where if you've got a nice pool of artists, you can match their art styles to the stories, and his art style matches this story.
Yeah. I guess one thing that we absolutely have to talk about when we're discussing a relatively new artist is the way that they've depicted the Phantom himself or herself. And it's an interesting challenge that the artists of these stories have got, is that they've got a lot of panels with both a male and a female Phantom, and they've got to draw both of them effectively. So and also when I think about this, I'm also mindful about how old the kids are supposed to be, because a few years into the future, I guess, makes them, 21, 23 at the absolute oldest.
Well,
would you figure?
Nadir, how old would you say Nadir is?
Nadir looked like he was in primary school. He looked like
he
might be
8? Would you say?
I was thinking 8.
I
Yeah,
was thinking more 5 or 6, but yeah.
Okay, so we'll say 5 to 8.
Yep.
We'll say 6 to 8. So probably Abby's age to how old are yours, Stephen?
Yeah, my eldest is 8.
Yeah, so between my oldest and your oldest, that, in a sense, so that means let's say 6 to 8. So that means the twins would be.
I've got about 25. When I'm looking at them,
so that would be
25.
Yeah, so I would say probably 22 to 25 is where I probably have.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, and I know the Walkers have got good genetics, but through this, Kit is especially bulk, and I suppose, and this is just from the first few pages of chapter 1 that I'm looking at there, and you can see the two of them. Kit is quite built, and we, I guess, the three of us watch a lot of Australian football. What year of AFL is this guy in? He looks like he's been in
he's been in the system for a few years.
He's been in the system for a few years. So, and look, he was playing professional football in America, so maybe that's and he's got good genetics, so it all makes sense. But what do you think of the way that Auden has depicted both the male and the female in this instance?
I think he's done Kit really well. I think he looks like a good, strong phantom. But yeah, he's obviously hit the gym up a few. Well, the jungle gym. The jungle. But you think he's going to get strong because, well, one, because of his genetics, and two, because of the work he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
And
Wilson McCoy's phantom was quite lithe compared to this one.
that's right. But that was Wilson McCoy's and not Genesis.
But it's not. He's not depicted like Chewie Chan's phantom on the front.
No.
I think, in my opinion, he looks, and I don't know how he does this, but Kit looks younger than the 21st Phantom. And maybe I'm just reading into that because I know he is younger. But in my opinion, he looks younger. I think Heloise looks younger than, say, someone in their 30s and stuff. I really like the way he's drawn Heloise. Heloise is more got that, the McCoy way, which is what you expect from, a girl. I don't want to sound bad when I say it like that, but you know what I'm saying. You expect her to be lighter than her brother, but she's still,
physically strong.
Yeah, she looks physically strong, but she's not like some other artists.
Not a bodybuilder.
Yeah, not a bodybuilder, and then she's not a porno star in an outfit as well.
If you check out something like WWE and see the fellas, they're big and strong and they do all this stuff. And you go see the women, nowadays, if you watched it back 20 years ago, they're just there for candy. But if you watch them now, they are fit and they're strong and they're doing fantastic stuff, just like the fellas are, and they don't look big and bulky. They look athletic, like Heloise.
Like Heloise, yeah. That's a very good analogy.
Probably, it is. It's
Steve.
I think probably the most. There's no real way of saying this without, like, I was gratuitous or the most overt. I guess overt. There you go. I should have thought of that before I said it. Gratuitous, but there you are. The most overt form of Julie, Heloise there is probably the front cover of which one is it? 1868 by Shane Foley. That's probably where she's at her fullest and perkiest, if we want to be blunt. And but in terms of the story art itself, yeah, you're right. She's a very athletic and.
I just realised that part 3 is the only one where she's not on the cover.
Is she on the back?
Yeah, correct.
No, she's not on the back either.
Yeah.
Not that I can see.
Good point. I like, which one was it? Was it part 1? On page 20, in part 1, where, and I think this is a really good point by Claes Ramifi, where he addresses the other elephant in the room is, how can there be 2 phantoms and one look like a female? On page 20 in issue 1864, I'll just read it out. It goes, "Who is the woman? Why is she dressed like the phantom?" And the little boy goes, "Because she is the ghost who walks, silly. His powers are endless and he can take whatever form he wants. He could be several phantoms if he wants to. And bam, it's out of the way and it never has to be addressed again." I really like that.
You should have put an old jungle saying at the bottom of that frame, I reckon.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember reading that and thinking that that was good, and because there were stories that where Devil comes out and I think, oh, he's changed himself into the wolf.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
it just kind of like answers, puts we don't have to think about that anymore because and it just took up one panel. I thought that was really good in addressing kind of like the whole thing. Now, what else? I'm just looking at some of my notes. Have you guys got anything you just want to?
Well, I like the throwback to the first Phantom story where he's battling the the pirate on the Shark Tank, and now we've got Kit who's in with the Sing, and there's a shark that he's got to contend with. I thought that's a nice little throwback right there.
And what about because I picked that, but I actually picked another story, is the, do you remember Reagan's Game? It was the daily story, the last published in 1786, where Reagan was a prince and they go through elements. And one of the elements was he was battling something and then two hawks came and attacked him to try and put him into quicksand. And it was very, the birds that try to swoop the phantom reminded me of that as well. So I like that. I thought Claes Remefi did a brilliant job in putting a lot of story arcs that he's created, but a lot of other phantom newspaper story arcs and threads and subplots into these as well. I thought he did a really good job with that.
And what I like about it is because that was in the first found story, and here we have Kit in really his first adventure, and he's got the same sort of problem.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that, and some of what you guys have just said in the last 5 minutes, Gus covered actually. I know you haven't heard it yet, but the listeners have, so that'll be interesting. As I said earlier, I don't know how long ago, about half an hour ago maybe, I think the rest of this story, if you take out Nadir, the rest of this story is excellent, and that's almost what bothers me. Like Claes has put so much effort into reviving all of these old characters, and whether it's from Babu through to Luaga as a doctor, and Sarah Cartwright comes back into it.
I was about to mention her, but I couldn't remember.
The
then he's added in another new character.
We've buried the lead on the vultures, because that's a 10-minute conversation in itself.
Oh yeah, there's the vultures, and then there's this street girl who's coming in who's being.
Jasmine.
Well, I don't know about. Not a fan of Jasmine just yet.
You're not a fan of Jasmine?
At least he's got all this old stuff, but he's also bringing in new stuff. He's changed up Moz. He's blind. He's got the inner eye vision now.
I don't like that.
Well, you don't have to like it.
I probably dislike Moz being a seer. That's probably one of my biggest bugbears. I can't as a seer, because he was never written as a seer. He was always a story, and then
you're not this strong on bloody Nadir.
Question: how old is Jasmine?
15, 16.
We've got the Phantom we got Kit as 22, 25. You got Jasmine as 15, 16. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I thought of her as a teenager.
Okay. I'm calling it now. Future love interest. Calling it now.
Yeah, well,
I think it's yeah. And maybe she's supposed to be 18, 19. That could fit as well. I'm happy enough with that. Mm-hmm. And I probably pegged the Phantom for at the lower end of the 22, 25 for sure. So I'm not a massive fan of Jasmine. It was almost like and this is a depiction of Kit as 22nd Phantom, I think, is unfortunate, because the moment that Heloise left and they drew straws, and that's the missions they went on, and I thought that was well done. But almost the moment she left, suddenly he needed Jasmine to save him, and Kit as a 22nd Phantom walks into a booby trap or a well-laid trap where they're pretending his old man's in prison. He fights his way through the trap that Sandal Singh has got for her, but then he needs a Heloise's replacement, essentially, to unlock the thing and save him. And then at the end, even at the big reveal, at the big fight at the end against the big bad guy, all Kit does is get himself knocked out and essentially distracts Rula so that Sandal can actually complete the deed, which maintains the trope of the Phantom never kills anyone, and Heloise has a thing about that as well. But what was my point about that again? Jasmine. Yeah, I'm not sure I like her. but I can see that she might be a love interest.
Yeah. And the
Phantom needs an heir.
Yeah, that's it.
We're not talking about 23rd Phantom again already, surely. Under the new rules, he could be with anyone.
I actually have to disagree. I actually thought Kit. I see your point, but I thought Kit actually performs really, really well in these 4 parts. And I understand, like, for instance, he got caught, but that's something that even probably the 21st fan would have been caught doing. But the way he handled himself with the Sharks and doing that game inside 5 minutes, thinking on his feet, throwing the spear to reach that point. And then in Sandal Singh actually says, oh, it might not be him, but he's just as good or just as good. I can't remember.
And that does harken to Lee Falk's stories like the 12 tasks and even the chain of patience. You get caught as a prisoner and you do what you've got to do to get out. And 22nd Phantom Kit currently is doing that for sure.
So I actually think that Kit, and this was my biggest gripe with the first part, was that they were behaving like 12-year-olds and not adults. And I remember there was one thread, I think it was Bill Featon on social media, actually made a comment. He said, I got 7 kids, and at their worst, they didn't behave like what Kit and Heloise did in the first part. And I think that kind of says something, that I think Claes Ramifi, and that was probably my biggest negative point on the first part, was the fact that Kit and Heloise were behaving like 12-year-olds. I think in this story, in this part, there was still that gentle ribbing and stuff like that. Like Heloise says, oh, who knew you could cook? And, and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's the general ribbing you'd expect from adults.
Exactly. But they worked really well together. They were like, like, for instance, I think it was in the first part where it was like, Heloise, give me your arm. And then they, mowed through that bad guy, giving him a, good old-fashioned coat hanger. And, they worked really well as a team. And that's probably the thing I loved the most about this, was just how well Kit and Heloise worked together. And it probably sold the idea that you can have the 2 Phantoms together at the same time because of this story. Before, I would have said, no, it had to be one or the other. But now I can I can live with them both being the Phantom.
Yeah, there wasn't a crossword spoken between the 2 of them across the 4 episodes. It was all teamwork. It was really good to see. So, no, 100% agree with that.
And until you just mentioned it, Dan, I thought Kit had been depicted a lot stronger in this chapter, in these 4 parts. But now after you said that, no, he's gone weak again. But until you said that, I thought he's been depicted as strong, which I think he should be, as strong as Heloise. Heloise has always been depicted as strong. And I think from my reading of it, Kit was depicted as strong, and like you said, able to think on his feet fairly quickly. And yes, he got into a trap, but you need to make the story interesting.
And as I said, he was excellent in the Jermaine said the 5-minute challenge and that sort of thing, and I absolutely agree. That 3 pages was absolutely
it was amazing.
Well, it's unbelievable that you might have an arena set up like that with a shark tank and then you've got to get past hawks, and then you've got to get past a lion, and then you've got to get past a guy with a sword. So it's pretty extravagant. And she was going to go bigger the next day, apparently. So.
That's right. You have to turn this up to 11.
Yeah. But that has to be a bit of a Singh trait, like for instance, the first story had a tank full of sharks and all that. So it's definitely, that must be like the first thing they build. All right, we're going to build our new fortress. Before we do the palace and everything else, let's do an array. When we capture the Phantom, we can try and put him through this. And so I want this, and I want this, and I want that. Now we can build the palace.
Sharks with laser beams stuck to us.
Step 1, big aquarium. I just the only comment I'd say about if we go back to Kit and Heloise working together, some of the dialogue was a little bit awkward when they're calling each other brother and sister. Look out, brother! Come over here, sister. That's just a dialogue issue. And I have never called my brother and sister ever in my entire life. So maybe that's just our family.
What I say.
Don't tell us
my brother-in-law, I call him my brother from another mother.
Yeah, don't tell us what you call him, because again, we don't want to press the E button. Now, getting back to Diana, I actually like the way Claes has depicted Diana in this part, because my biggest gripe about Diana has to be that since probably the 50s, she's been merely but a tool, a story plot tool in the sense, oh, let's get Diana kidnapped so that way it brings the Phantom into it. I thought Diana shows a lot more of what we've seen in the 30s and the 40s than probably what we have seen in the past. So, and I know she's dealing with a little bit, and she's had to, go through the breakup and stuff like that. But I thought it's nice to see Diana actually portrayed as someone who she was originally intended to.
All right. So speaking of how Diana's portrayed, how old was she when she had the twins?
Yeah, good point. So she'll be in her 50s now. She looks all right for someone in her 50s,
I was going to say, and parachuting out of airplanes and fighting her way through. Yeah, she's doing all right.
Yeah,
She kept herself fit and active too. Kept herself strong.
Yeah.
And this is where it is a bit, to go back to your point about how she's being depicted. I think that some of Cy Barry's staff had Diana as being quite a strong character, and it's her artwork. It's his artwork, I remember, of her judo throwing dictators and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't say she's been entirely just a damsel in distress through that period. That said, I go back to what I said earlier about maybe she could have been a stronger character again by maybe the Phantom's kidnapped or disappeared now, and she's the one tracking him down. So that could have been more effective.
Yep. Cool. Now, in our last review of stories, we talked about the editors and stuff like that. Now, I'm interested in what your guys, because the thing that I love about this story is that there's a lot of jumping from like one storyline to another and stuff like that. Now, what I've noticed is that majority of the time, most of the time, it was like, we go from one bit and it's like, now in New York, bam. Now in Singtown, bam. But there was a few incidences where there wasn't the narration caption boxes, I guess. Now, at any stage, did you find it kind of a little bit jarring not knowing, because it didn't have those boxes, and it's like you got a panel or two in it. It's like, oh, hang on, we're in New York again now, or
Every now and then, yeah, I see your point. That without the continuation box or what have you, and you read the box. Oh, we've skipped to another place of the world. Whether that took away from the story, I wouldn't say it took away from the story. Maybe a little bit jarring, but what I do like is we've probably got accustomed to being one setting per page, or at the most maybe two settings per page, where this one just went bang, we're here, bang, we're there, bang, we're there, all on one page, and you just go, wow, there's so much stuff happening here. It really helped. Now, you could go one of two ways, and not saying either opinion's right or wrong. There are some people who aren't going to like that. I'm over here now. I'm over here now. I'm back over here now. I'm just gone over to the left a little bit, all on one page. Whereas others are going to be like, "Wow, this is just full on, and there's so much happening. It's so exciting." I'm in the latter, of course, because I thought it was just so full on, so exciting. But I understand that there will be people who think, "What's going on? I can't keep up. I need a bit more clarity here."
Yeah. And I think sometimes that Diana and Sandal Singh kind of looked alike if you didn't pick the costume change. So that was probably the big one where you go, oh, hang on. No,
that's not
last. That's moved quickly.
So I just wonder, like, and we've talked about this in the last comics and news thing, where I think sometimes the editor, or whether it's Andreas Mikkel or Dudley or Glenn or whoever, sometimes I think that's where just and for instance another inject an old jungle saying or two. I think sometimes having that editor just to be able to maybe clean that up a little bit might have been a nice.
I think, other than that couple of things, I think that Claes has done an excellent, and I said this before, he's done an excellent job of bringing in a lot of old Phantom characters and tropes and elements of Phantom lore that we all know and love from the 1930s stories and onwards. That's probably what kind of concerns me about Nadir still being in it and that possibility, because he seems to be almost going above and beyond what he's ever done before in terms of incorporating that stuff, and whether he's trying to work this in to being just part of Phantom Lore as well. That's probably what bothers me about this story.
I think, now, would it also be the length that this has been brewing kind of bother you as well? Because, like, let's just say, for instance, like with Lubunga and the Lubunga series, right? That went for 2-3 years, where, like you said, when Sandal Singh and the Phantom, that was 9 years ago. So it's, you know, it's a long time. It's a long story thread. Where, you know,
I guess
like
if we've just aged Nadir before and said he's 6 to 8 years old, if he's 8, then that times out exactly right in terms of conceived in 2011. He's 8 years old now.
Yeah.
The twins actually did that in their first 8 years too.
Yes.
The twins' 8th birthday was actually 8 years after they were born. Their aging slowed down a lot after that. So maybe Nadir's will as well.
Yes.
I don't know.
Comic world time is different to real world time.
Correct.
Yeah. I just wonder whether the whole story, you know, the thread, seeing it's 9 years and still going, you know, with Lubunga, he had died twice in that time. You know what I mean? And like and then we were on to another, I think by the time that was happening, we were then on to, you know, the next president or something like that. So I just wonder whether the longness of the story threads could have something to do with the fact that we, you know, one of the reasons we don't like it, because it's still hanging around. We're still talking about that fatal evening. Or that fateful
meeting. That was the name of the story. Yeah,
we're still talking about it 11 years later, and it's still affecting our lives now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
Have you guys got anything else that you have kind of?
I would like to, and obviously, Case from Anthony could never have. Unless he's the most amazing force, he's got the most amazing inner eye of anyone. There's no way he could have foretold this. But how modern day these stories were as you're reading them, April through June of 2020. And I already mentioned about an epidemic reference in the very first in the first part on page 11 of 1864. There's a caption where I think it might have been Diana's watching the TV, and the newsreader is saying the latest tweet has been very, very controversial, and the White House is saying da 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 da. And then through to the fourth part, where they actually talk about if you're looting, then there's going to be shooting, and that actually is said in the fourth part of the story as well. So yeah, talk about being ripped from the headlines a year before. When he'd written it a year before.
It would be interesting having a look. So this is on page 11, the one that Dan's talking about on page 1864. Be interesting whether the original actually had that about the latest tweet, or whether that's a Dudley insert.
Yeah,
but
I'll give Clace the credit.
Yeah, we do want him to come on this podcast, so let's give him some more credit. Before we go, we need to talk about the vultures.
Oh, that was really exciting to suddenly, because there's this plot between, and we haven't even talked about.
There's so much we haven't talked about.
Oh,
the whole the report that Diana wrote, we haven't even touched on that.
Yeah,
that's
people
right.
People want Diana dead.
Yeah.
We haven't even mentioned that part yet.
That's
right. This silly report. Didn't she leave it? I can't remember. Did she lose her job, or they told her to get out?
Yeah, she lost her job.
Because the report had been leaked. The fake news version of the report had been leaked.
Yeah, so this report as well. There is so much. This is a brilliant story. Go out and read it if you haven't read it.
Yeah, he just ignored
just
skip
the divorce parts.
Normally, Stephen's fallen asleep by now. This is how excited he is.
But no, if we go back to the vultures, like the whole Bababu Darkfire storyline, I thought was really good. It actually humanised Bababu a little bit. You go, I feel sorry for this dictator because he can't. He's got so many balls in the air. He can't juggle them all. Oh, the gangs are riding and the weapons aren't coming. And what am I going to do because I haven't been able to deliver my promises to this international arms dealer?
Things start looking up for him. He said, "Oh, finally, I've got the gangs now. I've killed off my opposition. Now I've got control."
And it turns out the vultures are behind it all.
Darkfire's coming. They'll be happy with their envoy. Kaboom! The look at his face.
So there's no need for Antifa and the lizard people and 5G causing COVID. The vultures are actually behind it all.
The vultures.
It's awesome.
So in other words, maybe the Chinese are correct that it's not them that has caused it, and it is the vultures.
It's the vultures.
It could well be. It could well be.
What's going to happen in the next chapter?
Well, okay. So that raises the question: What is your prediction for the future? What's going to happen next?
I don't know what's going to. Of course, none of us know what's going to happen next. What I would love to see, and this is something I've been pondering and thinking about for a little while. And this is going to start off as a critique, or being critical, and then hopefully turn to something good. A critique that I've been getting with a lot of Phantom stories lately is that they're not in the jungle. A lot of things have been happening either in Morristown or Morristown, or depending on who's written what, or they're happening in New York or in a city like that, which, and then probably didn't notice it at first. It's just been happening slowly, and then over the last little while, I've just been thinking, well, what's changing the Phantom? What's the difference between the Phantom and Batman if he's just going to be in the city the whole time, lurking in the dark? Like, still great stories, but what's the difference between those two characters? And so I got thinking, well, where's the jungle? The Phantom's in the jungle. He's got to be doing stuff there. And what I would love to see, in the final part or final chapter, whether it's going to be the next one or 2 or 3 down the track, depending how long they can stretch this 20-second saga going out to be real good, is to bring the last chapter into the jungle, and 21 comes back and he does great 21 things, like you don't see him, all right, and it's just like a punch, or the bad guy's being taken. You don't see him. He is the Phantom, and you don't see him until he wants you to. But bad guys start being picked off one by one, and until whether it be Sandal, the Vultures, or Bababu, or some other gang, Mr. Big or Mr. Hog, he's in there too, and all of a sudden. They're scared, and they're scared out of their wits. They're in the jungle. They could have the rope people in there. They could have the banda. Maybe they're coming in from water, and the Mori have got them sorted. I don't know, but I'd love to see the big payoff happen in the jungle.
That would be cool.
I don't know how they're going to write it.
So
how they're going to get them in the jungle in the first place. But if they can get them in the jungle, it's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Well, I would actually like this series not to end, in the sense that every year we get another 2-3 parts of Adventures of the 22nd Phantom. And the disappearance of the 21st Phantom, it's like an ongoing serial where it's like, like with the olden days, the serials, you have each part, there's the fatal ending, or there's a big twist and stuff like that. So it's just like, every year we have to do one of these podcasts, and it's like, are we going to find out what happens next year? No, there's going to be something else. There's going to be another twist. So, next year we might be talking about Luaga getting back control over Babubu. And so, like, for instance, we've got, there's 20 things that have gone wrong with this at the moment. So, every year we kind of tick off one of those. So it might be Bababu gets knocked off it, and then it becomes Luaga back in control. And then, then there might be a war between, the tribes and stuff. So then we got to sort that out. And, and so every year we got another part of basically the Phantom's world getting back to normality without the 21st Phantom, and it's just that always that ongoing plot. So next year we might find Devil, and then that might be kind of like we found Hero last year. This year, this year we've got Diana coming back to the fold. Next year might be Devil coming back, and so that's just, I would like it just to be continuing for the near future, but it has to be every year. I don't want to wait another 3 years.
Yeah. I'm in disagreement there, because that leaves the door far too wide open to kill off the 21 and start going with the 22, and I don't want that. But that's me, and if you don't think that, well, you're wrong. No, but what I would prefer, and this is I'm not just going to say no, I don't like that. I'm going to offer an alternative. Is that they do wrap it up, and do the big kaboom like I've just went nuts on earlier. But then, where that happens, I reckon there's still got a good couple of years left in this story. But then after it's being wrapped up and things are back to normal, if we've got 21 back, but there's enough meat on, like we say that this can be wrapped up in, I'm just going to say 3 years, all right? Let's just say it gets wrapped up in 3 of our years. The storyline in the comic years, this could be, like it always says, in the near future. So it really could be any time frame you like there.
Well, you could
and then you could wrap it up and say, our 3 years, but it could be like 10 years in the Phantom world.
Yeah.
And then there's so much meat on the bones. You could call it the 22nd Adventures if you like. So so they've got adventures. So this storyline is all about finding out what's happened to Dad. But what about other things that they're doing during this time? Surely that there's something going on with the jungle tribes, or there's something else going on over here.
Yeah.
So at the moment we're just looking at the adventures, trying to find Dad. But what about everything else that they're doing?
Yeah.
And I think they can wrap up this story, but then they've given themselves this whole universe to play with.
So you have 2 universes or 2 timelines that we get,
which comes out, like you said, once a year.
We get 2-3 stories every year, and
it's just like, if you're going back and going to read a historical story with the Chronicles, well, this is like a future story.
And Arrow are doing that at the moment in the TV show. So, for instance, Oliver's daughter. So they're, normally it was always in the past. Now they've got her adventures as in the future of happening, and how they mirror up and stuff like that as well. So, there is precedent for that.
And I think that both of you guys are wonderfully optimistic, and I hope that your plans come to fruition. My future prediction for this story is that at some point in the near future, Phantom fans are going to go riding and not be very happy at all with the direction that Claes Romanthi takes his story, as he tries to make the Phantom the father of this half-Sing
That's a bit rough.
half sing.
Half sing. Get closer to the mic.
Yeah, sorry. That's my prediction. I think that Claes is pot committed to this, and he's going to go all in. And I'm going to hate it. I'm going to fold and get out.
It'll be interesting, because I'm not sure if you remember when we did our interview with Mikkel Sol. He said he didn't like it. He didn't
exactly.
like it either. So I think that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm being optimistic, but I reckon he will dig in his heels and say, no, it is not the Phantoms. And I think, he doesn't like it. And so I reckon he will, say, nah, rewrite it, Claes. Okay, now we can go ahead with it because it's not the Phantoms.
Well, and from a storyteller's perspective, it's going to be really, really, really hard to do that, because he is just so committed to this now, with the way that it's just been presented as fact through this 4-part story, without having a massive cheat somehow as an author. It's really hard for him to back out of this. And that, yes, maybe he wants to build in a jail cell that's so easy to escape from that he puts the Diana and Luaga in a swimming pool that anyone can climb out of. But it's going to require a much bigger cheat than that to try and get out of where he has placed this story now.
Yeah. It's become, yeah, I'll give you that. It's becoming harder and harder the further you go with the story thread to undo.
That's what the payoff is going to be so much better when it's all comes good.
I think Stephen swapped sides during the podcast.
What do you mean swap sides?
No, I like. If we go back to whenever Stephen just went ballistic there about his vision of this future,
Yeah.
I hope that comes off because that sounds awesome. I can't envisage how you might do that. Matthew's a far better writer than I am, so
Well,
I'm sure.
if Close has written into this, feel free to take my idea. Just give me a little credit down there.
Just come on the podcast. That will be good. So no, I'm with you, Stephen. I would like to see a separate timeline, continuous. I do like that idea.
If people say they can't handle it, well, you've been reading Chronicle stories for
Exactly
years.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's and it's not like we're in spaceships and stuff like that. It's so far in the future that it's hard to recognize. It's like you could read this story and kind of go, "Oh yeah, that's modern day." There's stupid tweets coming out of the White House. There's riots going on. That's today. So it is believable, and I guess the good thing about them saying in the near future is you could read this in 10 years' time and it can still be in the
that's what I opened up with.
Yeah.
It's always in the near future because 21 is the current.
Yeah. And it's almost the best of both worlds where the people that want the 21st to stay as the 21st forever, they're happy because you're still going to get your 21st Phantoms. And then the people that are like, we want a new Phantom, they're going to be happy because every, 2-3 issues every year, hopefully, is going to be about the new Phantom. So we're going to have, the ongoing story, whether it's with Jasmine or whatever. Then Heloise, what happens with Heloise? Does she continue with the Phantom? Does she find a love interest? And then they go on. Do they have a fight again? What about, so there's all those type of year one problems that we're going to get, which, we can have, but then the Focus or the traditionalists are still happy because they're still getting their 21st Phantom stories.
Yep.
All right. Anything else anyone wants to say? Otherwise, we might wrap this up because I think we've left enough on the table for hopefully our listeners to be able to pick up some of the threads and some of the discussions and let us know some of their views. Stephen, anything from you, mate?
I don't think so. Good to see Luaga back and
I like the fight as well.
Luaga's good.
It's funny because that was going to be my last thing as well, the fight between Luaga and Bababu.
How Luaga's going to become president again. Sorry?
But how old are they, do you reckon?
I reckon they're the same. I reckon they're the same age as. I reckon Babubu's older because he was a general at the start. So I reckon he's probably 10 years older than Luaga. But I reckon Luaga would be the same.
So Luaga was president and officiated at the Phantom's wedding in 1977.
Yeah, and well, comic years. But I reckon Luaga will be the same age as.
If Diana's in her mid-50s?
Diana, yeah. Well, okay, so let's say Diana would have been... So the youngest I reckon you can have him, it's a good question. The youngest you can have him is, say Diana would have been 25 and the kids are now 20. The youngest?
Oof.
The youngest?
Yeah.
So that makes her 45.
45.
47.
Oh, wait, she's older than that.
I'm going the bare youngest you could do it. So I reckon Luaga would be around that age, and that makes the 21st Phantom. He's what? So he would be almost 50 then.
Yeah.
And
All right, that works.
Yeah, so that's probably the earliest you can have. And I would say Babubu would be, because he was a general.
I always got him older than the Phantom. I always got him a few years older.
Yes.
Because he was a general, and to become a general, you have to kind of be in the army for a while and stuff like that. So for him to be a general, he would have to be in the army for at least 10 years and stuff like that. So I would have him probably in the 60s.
Yeah. So it's an old man fight between Luaga and Bababu. Let's face it.
Well,
and to their credit,
story too.
it is. He has a crack at him. Oh, you've let yourself get old.
Yeah.
everyone's talking about a Mike Tyson coming back. You know, come on.
Mate, I'm around that earliest possible age for the Phantom. There's no way I'm out and doing Phantom things until I'm broken, and I haven't been being the Phantom for the last 25 years.
Yeah. But it's a good point that you raise, because most Phantoms become the Phantom in their teenagers, 18 to 20.
We're saying that Kit and Heloise are 22 to 25. So
yeah. So
yeah. Well, by now
Anyway.
they'd usually be
yeah. So Kit better hurry up and make a move on Jasmine, because he needs to get the air. Anyway, I thank you.
This
everyone.
has been a good podcast. This has been fun.
It has.
This
I've
has
enjoyed
been
it.
a good one. This is. I hope you've enjoyed it
We didn't
as
even
much
swear.
as we have. And we're still friends. We didn't get upset at each other either. So it's all good. I hope
Touch and go a few weeks ago.
I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed reading the stories. Make sure you give us your feedback. Dan listed the ways you can do that via our social media, via email. On our website, which is chroniclechamber.com. If you want to email us, that's chroniclechamber@gmail.com. And of course, you can always subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or Android podcast apps. So from myself, I just want to say thank you for listening to us. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the stories. From myself, thank you guys, and thank you listeners. Happy Phantoming.
Thanks, guys. Happy Phantoming.
Happy Phantoming.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom! The ghost who walks. The Phantom! Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds you.
Happy Phantoming.